What's up everybody? Thanks for joining me on this Photoshop tutorial, and today I want to talk to you guys and teach you guys how to add fake birds to your photos. So this Photoshop tutorial is aimed at beginners, and even if you think the idea of adding fake birds isn't so great, I still encourage you to watch all the way to the end, because I'm going to be sharing some great shortcuts and basics of Photoshop along the way that you might be able to pick up on and learn from and apply to different style photographs in future. Now, let's talk about adding fake birds to photos. So when is it a great idea to add a fake bird to a photo? Well, the answer is never. It's never a great idea to add fake birds to a photo. Think about it. You're adding fake birds to a photo, damn it. Never a good idea. But let's talk about when it could be considered potentially a good idea to add fake birds to a photo. Now, what if you took a photo and it's a cloudless sky, and the sky takes up a lot of space in your composition, creating a lot of negative space, meaning your actual subject's a bit small, and your photo kind of has potential, but it just lacks that little bit extra, just that little cherry on top, just that little something, just that little bit of spice to add to your photo, and just turn an average photo into a really great composition. Now that's where I'd recommend adding a fake bird can be really great, because you can take an average photo with all that negative space in that cloudless sky and just break up the negative space a bit, completely change the composition a lot, and it can actually add a lot to the overall picture. Now, I wouldn't say adding fake birds necessarily fixes a bad picture, but it can make an average picture great. And it can also set you apart from your peers, because not everybody has the skill, so you can make your photos stand out even more compared to the rest, which is also pretty cool. So enough rambling. I'd say let me open up the laptop and let's head straight into Photoshop. Let's go. And welcome to Lightroom, where our journey on this tutorial begins. So this is the photo I've chosen, and let me just quickly talk you through it. I'm not going to talk you through how I've edited, because that's not the focus of this tutorial, but just point out a few things in this photo. So like I had explained at the beginning of the video, I just feel like there's too much blue sky here, there's not a single cloud, and it just kind of overpowers the photo. With the actual London Eye and the bust, which are the main subjects, kind of taking up very little of the frame, and most of this picture looking a bit boring with that just plain blue sky. Now the next thing we want to do is move this photo into Photoshop, and once you've done editing, of course. And the quickest way to do this is by already having Photoshop open, which makes this photo then load faster in Photoshop, by the way. And then if you right click on the photo, go on the Edit In option and select Edit in Adobe Photoshop. A dialog box might pop up or not, but let's choose this one, Edit a Copy Flight Trim Adjustments. Click on the Edit button, and then let's move across to Photoshop. Now here's the photo ready to be edited. Next thing we got to do is actually head into our internet browser. I'm using Google Chrome in this case, but other browsers are available. And search for the following: bird, silhouette, PNG. And then if we head into the images result under Google Images, there's a lot of options you can choose from, and I'd recommend that you guys browse and pick a few birds that you like. Typically something like this works very well, just kind of like a flock of birds, whichever one tickles your fancy, and then save those to your local hard drive on your computer. Now there are other stock websites available with a lot more variety, but I want to keep this tutorial free and easy to use, and that's why Google Images will do the trick as well. Okay, so let's head back into Photoshop. Once we select the photos we have, I've done that separately and have them saved already. And here's our background image, which we want to add the birds to on top. Now the best way to do this is by clicking this icon in the bottom right corner, which adds a new layer. And now it's as simple as opening up the folder on your computer where you've saved the birds, and then dragging the bird onto your Photoshop image. So here's the ones I've saved previously, and there's two examples that I want to show you, and just to show you some common things you may encounter while doing this process. So let's first start with this bird over here, which is actually a transparent background, like you'll see in a second. And these are the easiest to work with, right? Comes up as a box, the silhouette is there, the background's transparent, and then just by clicking on inside the box, you can move it around and place the birds wherever you feel suits them best. But we're not going to use that this time around. I want to show you guys a more difficult example which you might also encounter. So I'm going to hit delete just to remove them. And let's work with these birds because they're a little bit more difficult. And you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to use these geese right here. Now you'll see these don't have a transparent background. And of course, as it stands, they're not usable. So how do we make the white go away? Now the easiest way to do that is let's just hit enter just to place the birds. Now in our layer options, we actually have blending options. And I'll talk you through the ones we want to use. So within these options here, by using this drop down arrow, you'll see a bunch of options. You're going to go for the option darken, and I'll tell you why in a second. You'll see in the photo that the white is obviously brighter than our background image, and the birds, which are entirely black, are always going to be darker than the background image. And that's why darken is the perfect blend mode, because it will only apply the birds while making the white disappear because it's actually brighter than the background. Okay, so let's move into darken and let's look at the effect. Perfect. Now these birds are usable. So now the next thing we want to think about is where to place them and how to resize them. So by the way, I'm using a Mac. So all the shortcuts I'm going to be mentioning are Mac specific. But if you're a Windows user, your best bet is probably that every time I say the command button, it might be the control button for you. Otherwise, you may have to just Google the shortcut separately. So by clicking Command T, having the layer selected, we can again select these birds. And now the next thing we want to do is we want to resize them, because right now they just look a bit too unnatural and too big, as well as being a bit pixelated, because Google Images doesn't always give you the most high quality, high res results. So it just does make sense to make the birds a little bit smaller. And you want to keep the proportions of the birds, because if you just drag down on them, look, they become flat. That's no good. So I'm just going to hit Command Z to undo that. Two ways to keep the proportion the same is either by holding down Shift and dragging from the corners in, or if you hold Shift and Alt, you could keep the proportions, but instead of moving from one side in, you move the picture into the center. Check this out. How cool is this? So hold down Shift Alt and resize them. So I think something like this might be a good size. And now let's move the birds to where we want them. Maybe a bit lower, where we could maybe expect to see them fly. So around about there. Even center. Perfect. With the pink line suggesting we're center. So I'm just going to let go, and I'm happy. Now one thing I want to talk to you guys quickly about is because by adding birds, you're actually manipulating the composition of your picture. So it actually gives you the opportunity to make the composition a bit better. Now looking at this picture, this bus over here is moving from the right to the left, which draws the viewer's eyes into the London Eye, which is why I shot the photo this way. But now with the bus going from right to left and the birds flying from left to right, it confuses the viewer's eyes by sending them in both directions. And I don't think that's any good. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fix that up and make the birds point in the other direction. I'll show you the quickest way to do that. So if you look at the top bar over here, here's our dimensions. Because we kept the proportions the same, they're both on 39.84% downscaled. But now going back to the arrows, if I just hold down here and drag it across, while keeping an eye on the top percentages I just picked out, I'll get it as close as possible, but it won't be perfect. Now you can see these two numbers aren't the same, but now we have a minus in front of the W. So the easiest way to do it is just to type in here the same number as you've got on the H, minus 39.84, and we will have restored our proportions. Okay, so let's take the bird, click on the center box and bring it back to the middle. Get our spacing just right. And this looks a lot better already. Now the viewer's eyes are guided from the left side of the photo through the bus, through into the birds, into the London Eye. And we've actually improved our composition a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit enter just to place the birds again. And we're already finished. So now just going to hit Command S. Never mind. Just going to hit Command S just to save the photo. And that also should bring it back into Lightroom. Let's take a look. Just loading. And there we go. Here's the final photo back in our gallery, ready to be exported and ready to be put on Instagram. How good. And that concludes this tutorial. Just wanted to thank you guys for watching, and most importantly, I hope you learned something, and this might be a skill that you might be able to apply to future photos of yours going forward. So if you do end up adding some birds to your photos in future, I'd love it if you tag me on Instagram, because I'd love to see your results and see what you came up with. Also, if you have future suggestions for Photoshop tutorials or Lightroom tutorials or any other kind of photography skill you'd like to learn more about or find out more about, do let me know in the comments below, and I'd love the inspiration for future videos. Lastly, if you enjoyed watching, also be sure to like and comment anyway, because it really helps me. And lastly, if you're interested in this kind of content, where I create Photoshop tutorials, Lightroom tutorials, and as well as joining me behind the scenes as I photograph London and all over the world, I'd highly recommend you hit that subscribe button below and join me on future adventures. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in future videos. Bye for now.